The morning air was still cool when Maya stepped onto her porch, coffee mug in hand. She had lived at the edge of the nature reserve for nearly 3 years now, long enough that the sounds of the forest had become her alarm clock. The distant calls of hornbills, the rustling of wind through acacia trees, the occasional bark of a baboon, it was all familiar. But this morning, something felt different. She nearly stepped on it. A dead hare, its body still warm, lay directly in front of her door. The fur was sleek and unmarked except for a single clean wound at the neck. Maya crouched down, studying it carefully. There were no signs of a struggle, no scattered feathers or disturbed earth. It had been placed there, deliberately, almost gently. Her first thought was a dog from the nearby village, though none had ever wandered this far. Perhaps a jackal, or even a wild cat. She nudged the hare aside with her boot, feeling a strange unease settle in her chest. She straightened and scanned the tree line. The forest stood silent, shadows pooling beneath the canopy. And then she saw it. A leopard. The animal sat motionless at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by the low branches of a marula tree. Its golden eyes were fixed on her, unblinking, luminous in the early light. Maya's breath caught. She had seen leopards before on camera traps, from the safety of a jeep, but never like this. Never so close. So still. So deliberate. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The leopard's spotted coat rippled faintly as it breathed. Its tail curled around its paws. There was no aggression in its posture, no tension. Just observation. Maya felt her pulse quicken, a strange mix of fear and wonder flooding through her. She wanted to call out, to move, to reach for her camera, but instinct held her frozen. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the leopard rose. It turned with fluid grace and melted back into the forest, disappearing without a sound. Maya stood there for several minutes afterward, staring at the spot where it had been. The hare lay at her feet. The forest had gone quiet again. She didn't know what had just happened, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had begun. The pattern continued. The next morning, Maya found a guinea fowl on the same spot where the hare had been. Its feathers were pristine, the body positioned with the same careful precision. The morning after that, a small dew-eaker antelope, its delicate legs folded beneath it. Then a scrub hare, a rock dove, another guinea fowl. Each animal appeared at dawn, each one unmarked, except for the killing wound, each one placed as if it were an offering. Maya kept her distance at first, watching from her window as the sun rose. She caught glimpses of movement in the pre-dawn darkness, a shadow slipping between the trees, the faint sound of something being dragged through dry grass. But the leopard never stayed long enough for her to see it clearly. By the time she stepped outside, it was always gone, leaving only its gift behind. On the fourth day, she set up a motion-activated camera on the porch railing, angling it toward the clearing. She felt a flicker of guilt, as if she were intruding on something sacred, but her curiosity had grown too strong to ignore. That night, she barely slept, listening to every rustle and crack outside her window. When she reviewed the footage the next morning, her hands trembled slightly as she pressed play. The screen flickered to life, grainy and dark. At 5:13, a shape emerged from the forest. The leopard moved with quiet purpose, dragging a francolin by the neck. It paused at the edge of the porch, ears swiveling, scanning the surroundings. Then it placed the bird down gently, adjusting it with one paw before stepping back. For a moment, the leopard lifted its head and stared directly at the camera, its eyes glowing pale green in the infrared light. Then it turned and vanished. Maya replayed the footage 3 times. The leopard's movements were deliberate, unhurried. There was no fear in its body language, no hesitation. This wasn't scavenging. This wasn't territorial marking. This was intentional. The leopard was bringing her these animals for a reason, and that reason burned in Maya's mind like a question she couldn't yet answer. She sat back in her chair, staring at the frozen frame of those glowing eyes, and felt something shift inside her. Whatever this was, it wasn't random, and she needed to understand why. Maya watched the footage again, this time more slowly, pausing every few seconds to study the details. She had been so focused on the leopard's behavior that she hadn't really looked at the animal itself. Now, in the stillness of her small research station, she began to see what she had missed. The leopard was thin, not starving, but noticeably gaunt. Its ribs were faintly visible beneath the spotted coat, and its hindquarters lacked the powerful muscle definition she was used to seeing in healthy leopards. When it walked, there was a subtle hitch in its right hind leg, a slight drag, a momentary hesitation before each step. Maya rewound the footage and watched it again. The limp was consistent, careful, as if the animal were protecting an injury. She zoomed in as much as the grainy footage allowed. The leopard's coat, which should have gleamed golden in the light, looked dull and slightly matted. There were patches along its flank where the fur seemed thinner, possibly from rubbing against rough surfaces or favoring one side while resting. The animal's movements, while purposeful, were slower than they should be. This was not a leopard in its prime. Maya sat back, her chest tightening. She had spent years studying wildlife, learning to observe without interfering, to document without disrupting. The first rule of field research was clear: do not intervene. Wild animals lived and died by their own terms, and human interference, no matter how well-intentioned, often caused more harm than good. She knew this. She believed this. But this felt different. The leopard wasn't just passing through her territory. It was coming to her, repeatedly, deliberately. It was trying to communicate something, and every instinct Maya had told her that something was wrong. The gifts weren't random. They were a plea, or perhaps an explanation. A way of saying, I am here. I need something. Help me understand. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, tempted to email her supervisor, to ask for guidance, but she already knew what the answer would be. Document and observe. Do not engage. Let nature take its course. The words felt hollow in her mind. She closed the laptop and stared out the window at the forest, where somewhere in the shadows, a wounded leopard was struggling to survive. Maya woke before dawn on the fifth morning and positioned herself by the window, already dressed. She had made her decision sometime in the dark hours of the night, though she couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. All she knew was that she needed to understand. When the leopard appeared at the edge of the clearing just after 5, moving through the pale pre-dawn light with that same careful limp, Maya slipped quietly out the back door. She kept her distance, staying at least 50 meters behind, moving as softly as her boots would allow. The leopard paused frequently, turning its head to listen, but it never looked back at her. Maya wondered if it knew she was there, if perhaps it wanted her to follow. The forest grew denser as they moved away from the clearing. Thorny acacias gave way to wild fig trees and dense undergrowth. The leopard navigated through it all, with the grace of an animal that knew this terrain intimately, but Maya could see the effort it required. Every few minutes, the leopard would stop and lower itself onto its haunches, breathing heavily. Its sides heaved with each breath. Once, it lay down completely, resting its head on its paws for nearly a full minute before rising again. Maya's heart pounded in her chest, not from exertion, but from the weight of what she was doing. She was following a wild predator deep into uncharted territory, alone, unarmed except for a canister of bear spray she wasn't even sure would work on a leopard. Her research training screamed at her to turn back, but something stronger kept her moving forward. The leopard wasn't leading her astray. It was leading her somewhere specific. The terrain began to rise, rocky outcrops jutting up through the red earth. The leopard climbed slowly, favoring its left side, muscles trembling with the strain. Maya climbed after it, her hands gripping rough stone for balance. The sun had risen fully now, filtering through the canopy in golden shafts. Birds called overhead. The world felt both vast and intimate, as if she and the leopard were the only two beings in existence. She didn't know what waited ahead, but she couldn't turn back now. The leopard stopped at the base of a rocky outcrop, half hidden by dense brush and twisted roots. Maya crouched behind a fallen marula tree, her breathing shallow, watching as the leopard sniffed the air and then slipped into a narrow crevice between two massive boulders. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Maya heard a sound so soft, she almost missed it. Mewing, high-pitched, insistent, unmistakably the cry of cubs. Her hand flew to her mouth. The pieces began falling into place, sharp and sudden. The leopard wasn't alone. She was a mother. The leopard emerged a few moments later, moving slowly, her head lowered. She took 3 steps away from the den entrance, and then her legs simply gave out. She collapsed onto her side in the dust, flanks heaving, eyes half closed, Maya's chest constricted. From her vantage point, she could now see what the camera footage had only hinted at: a deep, angry wound along the leopard's right hindquarters. The gash was several inches long, the edges swollen and discolored. Infection had set in. The surrounding fur was matted with dried blood and dirt. Maya's mind raced. A territorial fight, perhaps, or a snare that the leopard had broken free from, leaving the wire to tear through muscle and tissue. Whatever the cause, the wound was severe. It explained the limp, the exhaustion, the desperation. This mother wasn't bringing Maya prey because she was marking territory or seeking companionship. She was bringing prey because she couldn't hunt properly anymore. Her body was failing her, and inside that den were cubs who depended entirely on her for survival. The mewing continued, soft and plaintive. Maya imagined them in the darkness, small, vulnerable, hungry, waiting for a mother who had nothing left to give. The leopard's eyes opened briefly, staring at nothing, and then closed again. Her breathing was labored, rattling faintly in her chest. Maya sat very still, her back pressed against rough bark, tears blurring her vision. The gifts hadn't been offerings. They had been proof. Proof that the mother was still trying. Proof that she would do anything, even approach a human, if it meant her cubs might survive. And now Maya understood the terrible weight of what she had been shown. Maya stayed for hours, hidden and silent. The sun climbed higher, heat pressing down through the canopy. The mother leopard eventually stirred, dragging herself toward the den entrance. 2 small shapes tumbled out into the light cubs, no more than a few weeks old. Their spots were dark against pale golden fur, their eyes still blue with youth. They mewed loudly, stumbling over each other in their eagerness to reach their mother. The leopard lowered herself onto her side, and the cubs latched on immediately, their tiny paws kneading desperately at her belly. But within moments, they began to cry again, pulling away in frustration. There wasn't enough milk. The mother was too malnourished, too depleted. She licked each cub in turn, grooming them with slow, deliberate strokes of her tongue, as if trying to comfort them through touch alone. But they squirmed and wailed, hungry and confused. Maya watched the mother's body tremble with the effort of simply lying still. Every breath seemed to cost her. The wound on her hindquarters had started to seep again, a thin trail of fluid darkening the dust beneath her. The cubs crawled over her, butting their heads against her face, seeking reassurance. The leopard closed her eyes and continued grooming them, her tongue rasping gently over their small ears. Maya's throat burned. She had seen death in the wild before it was part of the cycle, inevitable and natural. But this felt different. This wasn't a clean predator-prey dynamic or the quiet passing of an old animal. This was a mother fighting against her own failing body, refusing to give up even as her strength ebbed away. And those cubs, so small and unknowing, would die slowly once she was gone. They would cry in that den until thirst and hunger silenced them. The rules she had followed her entire career suddenly felt hollow. Do not intervene. Let nature take its course. But nature hadn't wounded this leopard. Nature hadn't infected that gash or starved these cubs. Something had gone wrong, and now Maya was the only one who could set it right. Her hands clenched into fists. She didn't know if she could live with herself if she walked away. Maya hiked back to the research station in a daze, her mind churning. By the time she reached her porch, her decision had solidified into something she couldn't ignore. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Dr. Amir Hassan, a wildlife veterinarian she had worked with on a hyena relocation project 2 years earlier. He was based 3 hours away in the regional capital, but he was the only person she trusted with something like this. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Maya explained the situation quickly, her voice tight with urgency. There was a long pause on the other end. When Dr. Amir finally spoke, his tone was careful. He warned her that approaching a wild leopard, especially a mother with cubs, was extremely dangerous. Even sedated, the animal could wake unpredictably. There were no guarantees. He also reminded her that intervention carried ethical complications. What if the leopard became habituated to humans afterward? What if the cubs imprinted incorrectly? Maya listened to every word, her jaw clenched. She knew the risks. She had spent years learning them, but she also knew what would happen if they did nothing. Doctor Amir must have heard something in her silence, because he sighed and said he would come. They agreed to meet at dawn the next morning. Maya spent the rest of the evening gathering supplies. She pulled out her field kit, antiseptic, gauze, wound dressing. Doctor Amir would bring the sedatives and antibiotics, but she wanted to be ready for anything. Her hands shook as she packed, adrenaline and fear mixing in equal measure. She kept thinking about the cubs, their small mouths searching desperately for milk. She thought about the mother's trembling body, the infection spreading through her bloodstream. This wasn't observation anymore. This was participation. She was crossing a line she had been taught never to cross, and there was no going back. The rules that had governed her work for so long suddenly felt like barriers she was willing to break. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the packed supplies, and felt the full weight of what she was about to do. Tomorrow, she would either save 3 lives or make everything worse. There was no way to know which until it was done. Dr. Amir arrived, just as the first light touched the horizon. They spoke little, communicating mostly through nods and gestures, as they loaded the supplies into backpacks. Maya led him through the forest to the rocky outcrop, her stomach tight with nerves. The leopard was exactly where she had left her the day before, lying in the dust near the den entrance. She lifted her head weakly as they approached, ears flattening, but she didn't rise. Dr. Amir prepared the sedative dart with practiced precision, measuring the dosage based on the leopard's estimated weight. Maya held her breath as he raised the dart gun. The shot was quiet, a soft hiss of compressed air. The leopard flinched, twisting her head toward the sting in her shoulder, then staggered to her feet. She took 2 unsteady steps before her legs buckled. Dr. Amir counted softly under his breath, watching her breathing. Within 3 minutes, the leopard was down, her sides rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. They moved quickly but carefully. Maya knelt beside the leopard's hindquarters while Dr. Amir monitored her vitals. The wound was worse up close, deep, ragged, and badly infected. Maya's hands trembled as she began cleaning it, flushing the gash with antiseptic while Dr. Amir prepared the antibiotic injection. The smell of infection was strong, metallic and sour. She worked methodically, removing debris and necrotic tissue, her focus narrowing to the task at hand. The cubs had emerged from the den, their blue eyes wide and unblinking. They huddled together a few feet away, mewing softly, watching the strange humans touch their mother. Maya glanced at them and felt her chest tighten. They were so small, so utterly dependent. Dr. Amir sutured the wound with steady hands, his movements efficient and calm. Maya held the edges of the gash together, feeling the leopard's warmth beneath her fingers. She could feel the shallow rise and fall of the animal's breathing, the faint flutter of her pulse. When the final stitch was tied, Dr. Amir administered the antibiotics and a painkiller, then sat back on his heels. They waited in silence. The leopard's breathing remained steady, deep, and even. Maya didn't know if they had done enough, but for now, it was all they could do. Maya returned to the den every morning for the next 4 days, always keeping her distance, always moving quietly. She brought small portions of fresh meat purchased from the village butcher Impala, kudu, whatever was available, and left them on a flat rock about 20 meters from the den entrance. Then she would retreat to her hiding spot behind the fallen marula tree and wait. The first day, the leopard didn't emerge until late afternoon. She moved stiffly, her sutured wound visible as a dark line against her coat. But she reached the meat and ate slowly, methodically. Maya felt relief flood through her so powerfully she had to blink back tears. The antibiotics were working. By the second day, the leopard's movements were noticeably smoother. She still favored her left side, but the trembling had stopped. She finished the meat quickly and carried a portion back to the den. The cubs tumbled out after her, bolder now, wrestling with each other in the dust while their mother watched. On the third day, Maya arrived to find the cubs already outside, pouncing on each other's tails and stalking imaginary prey through the scattered rocks. The mother lay in a patch of sunlight, grooming herself, her coat beginning to regain its luster. When Maya left the meet, the leopard rose immediately and approached, her gait almost normal. She ate while the cubs nursed, their small bodies pressed against her belly, and for the first time, they seemed content. The fourth morning was different. Maya placed the meat as usual and turned to leave. She had taken only a few steps when something made her look back. The leopard was standing at the edge of the clearing, not eating, not moving, just standing. Their eyes met across the distance, golden and brown, predator and human. Maya's breath caught. The leopard held her gaze for what felt like an eternity, unblinking, and in that moment, Maya felt something pass between them. Not gratitude, exactly. Not friendship, something deeper and simpler. Acknowledgement, recognition, a wordless understanding. Then the leopard turned, walked back to her cubs, and lowered herself beside them. She began grooming the nearest cub with long, gentle strokes, and Maya knew the moment had passed. She walked back through the forest, her heart full of something she couldn't name. 2 weeks passed. Maya woke one morning to find her porch empty for the first time in nearly a month. No prey, no offerings, no signs that the leopard had been there at all. She stood in the doorway holding her coffee, staring at the bare wooden planks, and felt an unexpected hollowness settle in her chest. She waited through the day, checking periodically, but nothing appeared. The next morning was the same. On the third day, Maya made the hike to the rocky outcrop. Her legs knew the path now, her feet finding the easiest route through the undergrowth without conscious thought. When she reached the den, she already knew what she would find. The entrance was dark and silent. No mewing cubs, no golden eyes watching from the shadows. She crouched down and peered inside, letting her eyes adjust. The space was empty except for scattered fur and the faint depression where the mother had once rested. Maya sat back on her heels, touching the cool stone at the entrance. The family had moved on. The mother's strength had returned, her wound healed enough that she could hunt properly again. She had taken her cubs somewhere deeper into the reserve, somewhere with better prey and fewer human disturbances. It was exactly what should have happened. It was the best possible outcome. But as Maya knelt there in the quiet, she understood something she hadn't fully grasped before. The leopard hadn't been asking for help. She had been doing what mothers do, providing for her young, in the only way her failing body would allow. The offerings hadn't been pleas. They had been acts of survival, of desperation transformed into determination. She had kept trying, kept hunting, kept bringing food even when every movement cost her, until she simply couldn't anymore. And then, when humans intervened, she had accepted it because her cubs needed her to survive. Maya stood slowly, brushing the dust from her knees. The forest around her was alive with bird song, the rustle of wind through leaves, the distant call of a troop of baboons. Life continued, as it always did. She took one last look at the empty den, then turned and began the walk home. She felt different somehow, not wiser, exactly, but softer, more willing to listen, more willing to see the world through eyes that weren't entirely her own. The leopard had taught her that.